My belief is that when you die, the aggregate of your consciousness will persist into your next life. And those who are predominantly unconscious, meaning unaware and just operating from a 3D sensation type of existence, a trigger reaction, there is only one life. There is how I feel about a situation. There's nothing beyond. Like, the person that exists in one lifetime, in one form, in one body, doesn't have a collection of conscious fragments that would pass onto another life. It's almost like they would just reboot with no knowledge. But if there's any sort of semblance of, I dare say, a soul, or any sort of semblance of the essence of a person beyond, that exists beyond that life, regardless of their belief in religion and spirituality, the conscious version of them that can see beyond one world, that can look into Maya and get a sense that they exist in other places, that can feel that there is something that they are connected to that is bigger than perhaps anything that they see on TV or is easily come by. There is a section of that individual that lights up whenever they connect with unconditional love, that lights up this memory of what it feels like to stretch beyond and expand beyond just the single life form that they remember and know. And at some point of their awakening journey, they might even start to have memories of other lives, or perhaps even visions of different lifelines that are happening simultaneously and concurrently, and they are aware that they transcend space and time. These candidates will have a beautiful experience following the death process. Again, no matter what their religious affiliation is, but the passage is almost like a reuniting with the elements that are out in the ether that cannot easily be disseminated into their physical form in this 3D life existence. And so it is kind of like a kaleidoscope where the conscious version of you, as you begin to awaken and come online, you will have pieces of understanding, almost like these little, I really see them as fragments on a kaleidoscope that are carried within your memory construct. And the memory construct that's relegated to this particular existence is going to fade. It's already fading. What did you have for lunch 3 Tuesdays ago? And so all of this extraneous information that you are carrying around as it pertains to your everyday existence, all of that is going to be stripped away as you pass from life to life to life. But the core essence of who you are as a multidimensional being, that is preserved. And you can pass through the death process with that aggregate of information in your awareness. It's not quite memories in the same way that we perceive it, but it is in the awareness and the collection of the essence of you, the individual, as you merge back into source. Now, here is the interesting part, because at some point, depending on which collective you are affiliated with, you do merge back into the source, and the individual dissipates and goes away. And this is a process of crossing the void and going through what I call oblivion. And it's a dissolution of all of the senses and awareness of you and the person that you have been raised to be and trained to be and responded to be. The universe trains us, not the universe, but our world, our moments, which are confined to space and time, trains us on how to behave, how to think, how to evolve, how to dress, how to eat, such that if we were to pluck you out of this space-time point, insert you in a random one, you would have no idea how to be. Literally, you would have no idea how to be. You would show up as the same person if you carried that memory, or if you didn't carry that memory, what would happen? You would be trained on how to be from a very early age. But that's not all of you. Just like when you were an infant, being socialized and taught how to be human, for my human listeners, you were given models and shown how to speak, how to dress, how to hold your fork, how to think, how to feel, how to be you. And then that sets you up into adulthood, where you then start to build yourself, unless you're unconscious, and then you remain the product of how you were raised and your genes and all of the intricate decision points that were a combination of your family deciding for you and you deciding for yourself, but were limited to their sphere of influence and the life path that they inserted you into, or perhaps that you chose, depending on how you look at it. That is the temporary self. Sometimes I refer to it as the false self, meaning it is entirely contingent upon your space and time point, entirely contingent upon your personality archetypes that were embedded into you, into your psyche at the time of birth, which may or may not have come from a past life. Sorry, I shouldn't say it's entirely dependent in both scenarios, because it's actually a little more complicated, and I'm simplifying it a little bit. So my apologies if it's a little confusing the way that I said that. Let me try again. When you are raised and taught how to be, and you are unconscious, that's all you are. Period. But when you are conscious and you were taught and raised on how to be, there's a part of you that knows that you exist somewhere else. There's a part of you that knows that you're not just that person that came in at that year in that family at this space and time point. And so you have access to other bits of data about who you are, who you want to become, that you have available to you. How do you have that? I believe that Carl Jung was onto something when he was talking about the subconscious mind, the unconscious mind, and the archetypes that we have embedded in us. When we are unconscious, we don't ever separate ourselves from who we are trained to be as children and those archetypes. In fact, it's quite simple. People who are unconscious are very, very simple, predictable people. I don't mean in terms of intelligence. I mean, they're not very complex because they are who they were raised to be, and there's some genes and some environment and some space and time points thrown in, but they are a compilation of all of those things that are readily identifiable by science and medicine. But when you start to ascend and you start to awaken beyond that person. You perhaps have always known that you were different inside, that there was something more than the finite world that you were shown. Is this it? Is this all there is? Is this what happiness is? I follow the formula and that's it. And then I'm happy, I'm die. Okay. Is there something more? Is there something greater? What's going on here? And you receive almost this download or package during the awakening process. Actually, you receive several that give you clues of your personal kaleidoscope and how things might fit together for you in a bigger picture than just your ordinary everyday life. And this is why many people who undergo the Ascension process start to align with things like integrity, purpose, mission, even the concept of alignment in of itself. They'll spend a lot of time thinking about, who am I? Who am I really? What am I doing here? Why am I here? What am I going to do now? What am I going to do about it? And it can create this sort of beautiful but chaotic existential crisis as somebody upends their entire life to center themselves on a bullseye that they know exists, but they don't quite know how to find it or where it's at, depending on how early they are in the process of awakening. And so, as we pass through death, there is something that we hold on to, even though we merge back, most of us at least, we merge from the individual into the expansive collective, losing the sense of I, losing all memories of the self, dissipating not only what you had for breakfast 6 weeks ago, but who your mother was, who your wife was, what your illness was, your natural death, your children, all of your possessions. But something remains. How is that? If all of the memories are stored within our brains, perhaps some of the leading thought leaders that talk about how this is not the case, hearsay, I know, isn't coming from a neuroscientist. Billy Carson has some really interesting ideas about this, that we are, in fact, receivers of quantum information, and that our memories are not stored locally, just like our local reality is not local, the way that we traditionally think about it in a binary construct. But that's neither here nor there. There is an essence of you that you do keep when you're conscious, that gets embedded into you in your next life. And I believe that this is stored in the subconscious mind. If we are going to call it locally, which there are question marks around that perhaps it's downloaded from a server. It's an interesting concept. And as you regain more and more consciousness and awareness, there's almost this further aggregation of the kaleidoscope where you start to hold more and more of who you are, which is why nobody can take that away from you. Even if you somehow ended up in a crazy alternate universe where cloning technology was real and somebody tried to bury you and to take you offline and replace you. When you are truly conscious, that can't happen. Because the essence of you, the construct beyond your 3D operating system, it's confined to one life, still coalesces. And similarly, when you die, you retain your conscious aggregation. And this is what I believe that some of these soul contracts are, where you have a piece of you that was so strongly activated in another lifeline in the past. It depends on how we are looking at it. The viewing angle changes our terminology. And right now, the cognitive flexibility is very, very fluid. So we're changing viewing angles and points of references. And for those who are not as flexible in this moment, this episode might be a little confusing for you. And this is why. So when you have a profound resonance with somebody, an energetic activation, there's something that gets imprinted in your consciousness that all of the details, their names, who they were, what you guys had for Tuesday for dinner, all of that gets lost, right? But there's a feeling, and it's more than just an emotion. There's actually a frequency that gets imprinted into your consciousness, so that as you move from life to life to life to life, depending on the fragments that they are also carrying, these can show up as wounds, or these can show up as patterns or unfinished lessons. Then what happens is that when you meet them again, you immediately feel this resonance that is impossible. Because in the 3D reality, you're supposed to go through a very specific process of getting to know somebody before you have any sort of emotions or urge. I'm sure you could be attracted to them, but this isn't what I'm talking about. Soul contracts resonate at a very particular vibration. and they can be quite powerful and, frankly, illogical. And so what happens is that you carry the imprint of them and resonate with them when it is a positive match. And we call this past life lovers or past life partners. And it's beautiful to be able to do it again.